given access to receive messages of clarity, guidance, and love. As channeler, psychotherapist, and author, Noemi Grace has an intimate dialogue with the divine on your behalf. Lisa Berry intuitively listens and expresses the deep questions on people's hearts and elevates the conversation, while Noemi Grace channels divine wisdom and expansive answers to your deepest questions. Each show's themes are related to self-love, self-healing, relationships, and personal struggles, offers tools that will lead to sacred stability and help you find your best solutions. Join us now as we give you access to angels and grace. Access to angels and grace. Noemi and I are so happy to be here with all of you.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, it's so nice to be here in daylight savings time for us in the U.S. and Canada. And yeah, we're happy to be here. Yes, enjoying the light later in the day. And but this topic, Lisa's going to lead us into this topic. This topic is so important for all of us. It's part of our human experience, and so we can all use a little bit more wisdom, more release from suffering.
Yes. I love that you actually said the human experience, because today's topic, guys, it's really humanly attainable to have this topic float around your world. And the word, because I got to give the key word here, it's mistake, making mistakes. And so I love that you said that. It is way more like we're not, it's not something like, oh, we're trying to attain angelic lifestyle or anything. This is literally about something that we all do in a way, but we're going to help you hopefully shift your perception. And Noemi, right out of the gates, I think I should just jump into the show description and share with everybody.
Sounds good to me.
All right, everybody. Our mistakes show us a way out of suffering. Ooh. One of our greatest fears is making a mistake. We especially fear the secondary outcomes of mistakes: feeling shame, humiliation, and regret, perceiving ourselves as incompetent, and letting others down. We think the pain we feel comes from the mistake, but it's exacerbated by those secondary outcomes and the story we tell. The human journey is The human journey is fueled by curiosity and experiments for which we cannot know the outcome. We will make mistakes along the way, but we can choose not to suffer in them. Making mistakes is part of being human. How we heal from mistakes is how we mature. How can we accelerate the healing after a mistake? We must understand that mistakes cause us pain, but we add suffering to the pain. We create our own suffering through the story we tell about the mistake and the emotions we feel when we sit in that victim story. And it's our suffering that keeps us from healing the pains caused by the mistake. So what if we could shorten the suffering and step out of it in a way that releases us and allows us to heal? We do this by liberating ourselves from the bondage of the story we created about the mistake. The mistake remains, nothing is erased, but we see it from a higher perspective, one that moves away from blame, anger, and regret, and embraces acceptance, forgiveness, and freedom. Noemi, I love this. It's like I almost welcome mistakes now.
Well, you are so transformed, Lisa.
Yes.
Well, and it's so interesting to me because you had this insight to do this, how to integrate a mistake. And as we started to tap into our wisdom and what we're sensing from source, we realized that the mistakes show us a way out of suffering, that's we can suffer, or mistakes are an opportunity to either suffer or be freed from suffering. And so for me, what's been showing up is like how easy it is to suffer. How it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. It is, we talk about ease and grace. Well, there's ease and suffering too. At least in terms of, it's not in terms of how quickly we can suffer if we're not aware. It's as if we've been programmed to suffer, just by everything we read and what we've heard from adults when we were children, and the way the world is. There's so much suffering, and it's so easy to find yourself in suffering.
You know what? You just made, I had to write this down, that the way the world is, we've accepted suffering. It's socially accepted. Yes.
It's not only socially accepted. Sometimes it can be a status. I survived this, right? You could be a survivor of a bad relationship or a toxic boss, or so we can. Yes. It distinguishes us from someone else. It's like a form of identity.
Yes. And we know, when people swap stories of suffering, they're like,
yes.
I had this. Oh my gosh, that's not funny at all. But I just see this so easily now.
Right? Sometimes people want to one up the other person. Oh, that happened to you? Well, let me tell you what happened to me.
Let me tell you. Exactly. And this is such a beautiful way that we can do, so because we wanted to show how mistakes actually can show us way out of suffering, but you have an interesting pre-story. You do lots of pre-stuff, so you have a story of pre-suffering.
The pre-woman here, yes.
Yeah.
So I've been moving out of my office space that I've been in for 5 years, but actually I haven't been there for the last 2 because I've been working from home. I've been doing telehealth for psychotherapy and remote healings, soul healing, and I have a business partner who went to the office to do her own telehealth, and she would do it from the office, but I wasn't leaving the house to go to work. I was only going there to use the credit card machine, which really there are plenty of ways to run credit cards. And so I was paying. It occurred to me as our lease is over at the end of this month, and we talked about, well, this is just a lot of money. And then all of a sudden I realized, I could have had $1,500 a month in my pocket. 2 years, I did the math, and I was like, wow, why didn't I pull out of this sooner? As if we knew back in March 2020 that 2 years later, we'd still be, there would still be this virus. And so, that hindsight being 2020, but hindsight can also be judgmental. The hindsight is saying, you should have known. Why did you wait so long? And this would have changed your financial situation if you had this money. And so I had that thought for a while, and then I was like, well, hey, I couldn't know. And I made up all the story. I thought the vaccine, this, that, and the other, all of this just to sort of argue against the suffering, which is putting me in further suffering. And, it's not a mistake. It's this... It's sort of looking at the past with an eye to see what I could have done better, but with judgment attached. And so, learning what we can do better is always great, but the judgment that was attached to it. And this thought would come, and I spent 8 hours in the office shredding files and packing things. And I was like, it would have been so nice to have that money. And the thought kept coming back, and I was like in this suffering. And especially when I was 8 hours on my feet, I was exhausted. So it's like, they're the big mistakes that we make, the things that feel so like, oh, that was so out of alignment with who I am, or why was I in that relationship, or why did I take that job when I felt like it was going to be, I felt in my gut feeling wasn't going to be a healthy job, and those things. But then there are the things that we look at mistakes that weren't really mistakes, but we can suffer from those too. And so
you actually reminded me of that statement, and I think that's incredible and wonderful to look at. Like, hindsight holds judgment, but you're reminding me of that saying, throwing good money after bad, and that in itself is like, oh, wow, that was a mistake. It was a mistake already, but then I kept on doing the mistake. And so you were I'm curious about this. So you're in a position where you are stopping this quote unquote mistake. Like, you're no longer going to pay for this rent that, you could have not had, so you're no longer doing that mistake. But how will you be able to move forward now to see it not as a mistake and not judge it that way?
It's sort of the shoulda, coulda, woulda, I should have known. I should have, how should I have known 22 years ago?
Yeah,
I could have, As soon as Delta showed up, I should have said, I'm done. So it's just, it's that reflection. They're really, it's not a mistake. It's not. I mean, it would have been nice to make a different choice, but I didn't, and it's okay. We can always look back and see what choices we could have made. Should have left that relationship a year ago. Should have, not stayed with that toxic boss. Should have, should have taken that job offer or not. Should have this, should have that, could have that. I could have trusted myself more. Ooh, that's a big one. I could have trusted myself more. And if I did, I wouldn't have done that. And so all the story, right? The story, and then the pre-channel message talks about that. The story adds, and it was in the show description. It's that story that's causing us to suffer. The story that I could have done something so fabulous with that money. The story that I should have done that, or I shouldn't allow this person to talk to me that way, right? All of these things. It's that story, okay? That adds to the mistake and causes us to suffer.
Yes, and we will be talking about how we're not simply, we can't erase the mistake. It's done, and it's not that you just have to sit there with it. But what do you think, Noemi, as far as timing? Shall we have you read the pre-channel message, or just we talk about the topic a little longer? Or what?
What do you sense? I could go either way.
Okay, I think we should hold off. Let's finish up, because I think that we're talking about the. Okay, so the mistake, quote unquote, I'm starting to think that there doesn't even exist a mistake anymore. I guess the mistake, would a mistake only be, you've seen it, you're aware of something, and then you continue it because of the story, that you don't think you can escape this mistake.
Yeah, I was told once I was told by a spiritual being that, when I sometimes talk to angels and things like that as a channeler. I was told once that the only mistake, and I'm sure people have said this, the only mistake is to not learn from the things you call mistakes, the things you label as mistakes, right? To keep going, to put the blinders on. It'll get better.
Ooh, yes. It'll get better. But with no change. Okay, yes. So I guess that mistake would be expecting external things to correct, let's say it, or to fix,
the wishful thinking. So I see that as wishful thinking too, right? Either denial, right? Why don't we learn from our mistakes? We're either in denial. It wasn't really that bad. Oh, it just happened because of this trifecta of whatever, the perfect storm, and we have we minimize it. We take that story and we spin it. We're like, into a direction where it's not so bad, or there was something else, but I don't recall. So.
It kind of feels like, at that point we're trying to cope with a mistake. Like, so we're not correcting it, we're not learning from it, but we're literally coping with the mistake.
Yes, and minimizing it, right? And explaining it away and so it is when we don't own, right? As soon as we don't own if we own the mistake, that takes so much sting. It takes so much of the power out of the mistake and puts it back into our hands, where we can say, okay, in hindsight, yes. So stripping the judgment from hindsight allows us to reflect and really see the truth. The judgment prevents us from seeing the truth.
Okay, hold on a second. Stripping the judgment from hindsight allows us to see the truth. That's
what I just, that was just channeled. I had never said that before.
I love that. And now I'm so, this hindsight business. Interesting. I have a new relationship with hindsight. So when we review things, as you're saying, when we review, we have to do coming from those three words we mentioned in the show description: forgiveness, compassion, understanding, and love. But if we are blaming ourselves or others, which of those steps must come first? Is softening? Maybe that's a channeled question, perhaps.
Well, yeah. I mean, For me, it's seeing with eyes of love, which is also eyes of compassion, right? Which with compassion comes understanding. So it's that shift in perception. Marianne Williams says that the miracle is a shift in perception. It's not winning the lottery; it's the shift in perception.
Yes.
So that miracle is what needs to happen. However it is, whether we can have compassion. I think compassion is always needed.
Yes.
Non-judgment, all of that.
That compassion really gives us, if someone, say I were to make a mistake, like I just had an accident, like a car accident, I ruined my dad's vehicle, like I rolled it, it's gone, it's done, and I was terrified, like he's the sweetest man in the whole world, and honestly, I was terrified because that was my biggest fear of making a mistake, and not only make a mistake, but we said in that show description, letting somebody down, or in my case, damaging somebody's, property, and I have to say that in the end, it turned out really, so I made a joke. I was trying to be light and fluffy about it after I bawled my face off crying to him. But I said, look, Dad, I really actually just liquidated your assets. Now you can get the money for it. I sold it for you in a new way. But I was trying to, lighten the thing there. But really what it is when somebody else offers you that, when they can see you're calling a mistake with eyes of love, sometimes we need that. We need somebody else to say, it's a mistake. Some things happen, and then now we can go, wait a second, maybe that's right, maybe I'm being too hard, or I'm not offering myself compassion and love, and I think it goes a long way to receive it and to offer it.
Oh yes, and if we can be that for others, right, not only waiting for that for ourselves, but be that for others, how much that will change our experience of life.
Yes, I love that. Well, we'll sync with the commercials. We'll come back. And not only now do we have the pre-channeled message, now we have a question for Noemi to channel.
Oh, boy. Lots of good stuff when we come back.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
My loves, you know you're here as a soul-led leader to transform this world through the sharing of your passions and gifts. You are here to be in your warrior of light and align your business with your highest self. I'm Rosalind Fung of the show Activate Your Soulgasmic Business. Let's elevate your business to the next expansive level. I invite you to flow into a business soul alignment discovery call with me at rosalindfung.com. That's ROSALYN, fun as in have some fun, FUNG, and let's see how I can best hold space for you to align your highest self, magnetize your dream clients, and monetize on your soul mission. I can't wait to connect.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Do you feel like your emotions are all over the place? That's normal during this abnormal time. There are a number of ways to cope. Maintain a healthy routine, get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, and exercise at least 30 minutes each day. Schedule some time to talk with a friend or family member. And remember, you can always take a few deep breaths to feel more centered.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome, everybody, back to Access to Angels and Grace, where we are very... Oh,
Lisa?
I knew I was muted.
There it is.
Hello there. That was such a fun.
I could hear a
talking
little
away.
bit. It was interesting because I could hear a little bit.
Oh, there we go. Well, I am welcoming back everybody to Access to Angels and Grace. And today we are talking about how our mistakes show us a way out of suffering. And Noemi, there's some such golden stuff here, and I'm coming up. I'm intuitively listening, getting those questions.
Yes, you are.
I'm hearing those statements from people like, mistakes out of suffering. No, I've wasted this time. I've missed the boat. It's too ruined, and I can't get there. So I know that the pre-channeled message offers some beautiful, sweet, loving help there. So let's go into that first.
Oh, absolutely. Because so what Lisa calls the pre-channel message is when I sit down from 2 days to a week before the show and sit with the divine and say, okay, here's our topic. What do you have to say? And so we start with that and start with that starts the conversation. I mean, we have already written our show description, but then I get to hear what the divine has. So your mistakes are opportunities for freedom. The way of suffering has become synonymous with the human experience for many of you, yet the path out of suffering is available to all of you. But you must first realize that you're suffering. And in that recognition lies the seeds of freedom. Without awareness, you continue to suffer. Awareness gives you the keys to end suffering, but you must find the door that matches the keys and open that door to find freedom. The door to freedom lies within your grasp. But you must first stop grasping and clinging to the roots of your suffering, which lie in victim consciousness. You see yourselves as victims of someone or something, and it's hard for you not to, because you have been programmed to see yourselves as the victims of others' life and even yourselves. Yet freedom is available to all of you all the time. Do you want to be free of the suffering caused by seeing yourself as a victim and choosing from the place of victim awareness? Of course you will say yes. But the victim has its benefits. It has many perks, which include having someone or something to blame for everything, which can be very convenient. This allows you to control how much ownership you are willing to take for everything in your life. You have been taught to always find someone or something to blame, and the idea and need to blame keeps you stuck and causes you to suffer even when you're blaming someone else. You cannot blame others and be blameless. The guilt associated with blaming follows you around, and all of this becomes a vicious cycle. Blame, guilt, shame, remorse, regret, and so many other unpleasant experiences are part of the cycle triggered by victim awareness, by seeing yourself as a victim who deserves more and better. Sometimes you also see yourself as a victim of yourself. You see yourself as not good enough, not smart enough, not beautiful enough, not rich enough. Yet the only thing you need to say enough to is the idea that you are a victim and the manifestation of the many attributes of the victim in your life. By the virtue of your owning the idea that you are a victim and choosing to live in victim consciousness, where everything is tainted by the perception of victimization. Everything, even love, can be experienced as a form of victimization when you're steeped in being a victim and seeing and choosing from the stance of being a victim. This way of seeing and being is the source of your suffering. It causes you to spin stories in which you are being victimized. It taints how you see and say and do so much in your lives. But what if you removed your ability to perceive in this way? What would look different? You can change how you perceive, which will open up a whole new world to you, in which you have the power to change your life, and you can appreciate the many gifts in your life without detracting from them by your victim stories. You can learn to see your mistakes in this new way through eyes of love, and you can change how you relate to your mistakes and see them as opportunities for more freedom. Your mistakes not only show you where you can do things differently, they also show you the parts of you that are unhealed. Mistakes are like a map of what needs healing. Not so you can blame yourself, but so you can heal. Without this, your wounds continue to control your life, and you would be unaware of the impact of those wounds on your life. Your wounds are subconsciously controlling your life. They limit where you are willing to go and what you are willing to try. They form the boundaries of your perception, allowing you to see only what is acceptable to the wound. And that is dictated by the victim, which attaches itself to your wounds like a leech. To break the bond of victim and wound, you must see the wounds with compassion and stop judging yourself and everyone else. This is possible, but requires higher consciousness, not victim consciousness. See yourself from the eyes of love, and you immediately elevate your awareness. How can you do better if you're stuck in blaming yourself or abdicating responsibility by blaming others? Your freedom from suffering begins with a single choice: to see yourself, others, and your life with eyes of love, and to embrace compassion, kindness, and acceptance. Everything is here for your transformation, growth, and freedom. And these are available to you now. All you need to do is choose it. And you choose it by choosing to shift your perspective from victim to love. This will empower you more than you can imagine and lead to freedom from suffering in every way. It will also open new doors and opportunities for you to grow and engage in new possibilities, even the fulfillment of your dreams. And it all starts with a shift in perception and the choice to stop seeing yourself as a victim. Then every mistake can lead you on a path of fulfillment and joy. Many blessings await you when you're willing to shift your perception and learn how to choose from the source of your power, which is love. We are in great love for you always. Namaste.
Oh my gosh.
Oof.
There's just so much in there. And I remember when you first shared this with me, and there's so many that stuck out to me. And again, the same, more, but the same ones. And one of them is mistakes are like a map of what needs healing.
Yes.
And unhealed wounds, which kind of goes with the first one. Unhealed wounds limit your life. And that just, what's funny is because it does, it's tainted, and then we have this bondage of victim or not good enough or blame, and so if we kind of spin that around and say, okay, wait a second here, let me just look here. Okay, so I think this is a mistake, I think that's a mistake, I think they did this mistake and I did this mistake. And we go, here's a map. All right, so if I think this is a mistake in my life and it needs healing, so if we could, Noemi, just take your situation, putting you under the spotlight here.
Sure, why not?
Yes. So you think, okay, I made a mistake. Why didn't I should have got out earlier. Could have saved all this money. And you think, okay, what part of that do you think, what shows up for you that needs healing in there?
And just that I should have got out earlier can apply to so many things, right? A relationship,
Yes.
a job, the stock market, whatever it is. I should have got out earlier. So this judgment of mistaking the timing. And so what was your question? Because I was sort of thinking that how it applies to so much when you said it that way.
Yes. So here's an example of Noemi. She goes, I should have got out earlier. So what is it that needs healing?
What is it that needs healing? Yes. It is really that perception. There's nothing. What happened in this case, right? I wasn't traumatized by it. So what happened in this case itself doesn't even need healing. It's the perception of it. It's the way I'm seeing it. The way that's the victim. The victim is always available to us. So when the victim shows up, when I get in the wounded ego, and it brings in the best friend, the victim, and they're there saying, you should have known better, and all of that. So it is that story. It is the perception that needs healing. And so many things can be healed by a change in perception. So much, not to diminish healing work, because I'm a healer, and also, but it is so much can be healed by changing that perception from from the powerlessness to seeing it with compassion, seeing with kindness, seeing changing, Wayne Dyer said, right, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, which also has to do with our past and our perceived mistakes. They change, they look different by simply changing the way we look at them.
Yes, and I want to highlight here something because as you're saying this, I'm feeling like, okay, so what we are not saying, which I think would not be a good, not the best way, not the way to heal this, is that, so say I blame somebody else for something. Say I was presented with a job and I love it and it looks so amazing and all these opportunities and they really made it all like they told me the best parts of this job, right? And maybe it's motherhood, maybe, it's anything. It could be that like, oh wow, it's going to be all roses and stuff. So we say yes, we start doing this, and then we're like, oh my gosh, and then we feel like we made a mistake because we didn't have the right information, that they told us something and they painted a different picture. So it's not just shifting the perception from, okay, I made the mistake. It's not you that made the mistake, it's me. So that's not the shift that we're looking for. And I could hear that buzzing around, like somebody saying, okay, well, I'm angry with a lot of people, so I'll just take the blame. So it's not about becoming the martyr here.
No, for sure not.
Yeah. So,
and the definition of martyr, right? And this does not include people dying for this does not include Ukraine and things like that, okay? I don't want people to misunderstand, but there's this colloquial definition of a martyr, which is a victim on a mission, and this does not include people that are dying, that are suffering through someone else's hand.
Yes,
they are martyrs in a real way. But the way when we perceive ourselves as a martyr, those of us who are living in our comfortable places in life and we're just feeling martyry, this is that's the victim with the mission. It's like I tried to do this, I tried to make life better for everyone, and they whatever. And so it's that story that's creating suffering.
The story, yes, and it is that story. So I think that was that was the question I was going to have. The story. So
all right, so we can do a quick
question.
Is a
story. Oh, yes.
Let's do a quick channeled message. Probably be a minute late to
commercial. Yes.
Commercial.
Okay, so I think this would be the fabulous thing is stripping the judgment from our story, from hindsight, but that and judgment being
and from the story. Yes.
Yeah.
So let's
dive in.
Judgment equal the story. Okay. Yes. And I like to bring in the hindsight because that was channeled when I said it, and I was like, oh, hindsight is not 2020 when it holds judgment. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty profound. Okay. Just gonna take a couple seconds to deepen and turn it over. Hello, Divine. So grateful that you're here to help us with this. Anything that you can share with us, we're so grateful about how we can strip the judgment from the hindsight and the story and all of that, and how that will help us to heal from our perceived mistakes. And we are grateful to be here. And this topic is an important one because it is not possible for you humans to not make mistakes as you see them. You will label your life as having many mistakes, and that's understandable. The imperfection that you experience in the human experience also offers you the opportunity to see the inherent perfection that is available in so much of your life. And you would not see it if you didn't experience the imperfection. And so suffering is a great detractor from the human life, from the human experience. And that suffering does occur, as we said earlier in that message Noemi Grace read, from the way that you look at things, the stories you tell about it, the stance that you have with it, your relationship to it. And so when you tell the story of something that happened that caused you pain, do you add to it that judgment? Do you add to it some blame, some shame, some guilt, all of that in your experience? And when you can step out of that judgment, which creates all of that, you go a long way to freeing yourself from this mistake. And we are doing air quotes when we say this perceived mistake. We'll call it a perceived mistake. And so this mistake, the perceived mistake, is something that you have labeled it as such. The results were not what you wanted, not what you expected, not what you hoped for, not what you think would have uplifted you or brought joy to you. And there is this experience that was not what you wanted, not what you were calling for. And yet you had this experience that came along, this pain that then became spun into suffering. And so when you suffer, acknowledge that you're suffering. As in Noemi Grace's story, she recognized she was suffering. Recognize the suffering, and then you can step out of it as you would step out of a prom dress or some wedding dress or some dress that is a gown that you have to step out of. And so step out of it. But you can't do that if you don't realize you're suffering. If you are attached to being right, to being heard, to trying to change the things, trying to change the situation, trying to change other people, and trying to change your perception of yourself. Recognize your suffering. That's the first step. Recognize your suffering. And in suffering, there is always judgment. They go hand in hand. And so when you recognize your suffering, because there's no joy in suffering, there's no peace in suffering, there's no compassion in suffering, you are feeling very much dissatisfied with life, discontent, maybe angst, as Noemi Grace likes to use that word, maybe angst, but you are feeling fearful perhaps. There are so many feelings that you're having that are not coming from love. Recognize the suffering. Then you can ask yourself, where's the judgment? Where is the judgment that's associated with this suffering? Where is the judgment that's created this yarn, this tale that you are holding on to? And in that, say to yourself, I'm suffering. I know I'm suffering. And I know I'm judging. And I can stop this judgment right now. I can choose to see that judgment with eyes of love. And this is a practice. And we've spoken about this through Noemi Grace in her book and on this show. And this is a practice to shift from judgment to seeing with eyes of love, to seeing from love. And the more that you can do this practice, even just a little bit, it opens you. It opens you. It's every little opening moves you beyond, moves you further from the suffering, moves you further from the pain, moves you further from the story that you're holding, that's holding you and tying you to the very cause of that pain. And that is the suffering. The suffering ties you to that painful situation and won't free you, but you can free yourself by recognizing that you're suffering and choosing to change the way you're seeing things, because the way you're seeing things is creating that suffering. It is causing you to suffer. And we want you to be aware that you have the power to change that. And you have the power to step out of suffering at any point. And with much more to say, we will end here and we will come back for more. Namaste. Wow.
Beautiful.
Perfect timing. They said 1 minute. Yes. And that was, there was so much there.
We shall return right after the commercial break for that one. Thank you, Rebecca.
No, my pleasure.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Consistently attract soulmate clients, begin showing up on brand, monetizing on your calling. Welcome all spiritual coaches, leaders, healers, light workers, and practitioners to a show that turns you on in your business and amplifies your magnetism. I'm host, catalyst, and spiritual business coach Rosalind Fung, and I'm here to journey with you into the juicy and help you discover where the real gaps are. Ignite your mindset and soul with strategies and systems as each episode takes you to the sweet spot that activates your soulgasmic business by tuning in on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain. Join me for your light language activation and let's magnetize and monetize.
So I'm a cat. and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. We're here with Access to Angels and Grace. Noemi Grace is here. She just quickly, but not quickly, channeled and got some clarity from Source there. And what I loved, which really stood out the most, was the question, even though the first part of the question, really the second half, it was how can we heal? How can we heal from this story, this mistake, this judgment? And I really heard what came through for me was identify, find out where that judgment is, where that story is, and then offer it compassion.
Yes. Offer that compassion. Yes. To the judgment itself, it sounds like you're saying. So to what you're judging, offer compassion. See it, bring compassion to what you're judging and bring compassion to the judgment itself, right? We judge the judging so often. It's like, oh, I'm judging, and so bringing compassion. We actually judge
the judging.
Yes, we do. I can be good at that. So it is, I just took a little notes here during the commercial of what I recall. Those recognize your suffering. Notice the judgment that's tying you to the suffering and practice seeing with eyes of love.
Yes. Oh, see? Yes. Recognize the suffering. So, that's an interesting thing. What does it look like when we don't even recognize the suffering? What does a life look like that doesn't recognize it?
So in my experience, it becomes easier and easier to recognize the suffering as the more that we heal, the more suffering is not comfortable anymore. There was a time when I just lived in suffering. I lived there. I didn't know there was a different address. I didn't know that, small things, somebody not returning a phone call for 3 days, small things used to cause me great suffering. And this is many years ago. But it would be, I would suffer over the smallest things. And I didn't know that I was suffering. I didn't know that I had a different option besides that. And so I would feel hurt all the time. And that for me that's how I knew I was suffering. I was feeling hurt. Some people, they're feeling angry. They're feeling angry, because they're feeling, anger because they've been traumatized. They've been taken advantage of. So they're feeling angry. Different people are feeling sad or different, they feel sad. They feel sad about life. They're, they get into that down place. So I think, and this awareness is just, again, they're channeling, even when I'm not in channeling mode here, but it's knowing your flavor of suffering is helpful.
Yes. Yes. I love that we actually just helped define that, because I was thinking about that, how suffering sounds like maybe people think, well, I'm not suffering. Like, I've got a roof over my head. I've got food, but so I love that you said, you might be upset because somebody hasn't returned your call, and we might not recognize that as suffering right away. Or if you get up and you're just, like you said, angry. I love that. Hurt, angry, sad, not elevated to a place of joy and content, I think. Content.
And even contentment, right? So, peace. There's no peace in suffering.
That's, yes. There you go. There is no peace in suffering.
Never thought of that before. So I'm getting the sense that know what it's like for you, that angst, as I call it, which Divine mentioned, that angst. It's just, sometimes I'll say I'm feeling angsty, that I know I'm suffering. Now I have the awareness that I'm suffering. So that's that actual linkage was not so clear before. And it's if I'm feeling angst, I'm suffering. What is the judgment that is the source of that suffering? I should have known better. I should have
And there's also
whatever it
timing
is.
on this one. It's so interesting. I have a very good girlfriend, one of my best friends, and I'm going back 25 years here now. But I remember she was not recognizing when she was suffering, because she was just constantly suffering, and she was accepting it and just let the next thing. And so when I would have something that I don't want to suffer. I'm like, oh no, something's wrong. I need to deal with this now. And so she used to get mad at me. She's like, why didn't you call me to talk about it? And I said, well, because I recognized I was suffering and I had to deal with it. Because I would always tell her after the fact. She goes, well, you didn't even give me a chance to help you. And then we had this issue. And because she would suffer with something for a year or something, like a seriously long time. And I would be like, oh, no, I'm upset. I got to, talk to, at the time I was married, so talk to my husband about this right away or work this out for myself. And then I would tell her about it. And so there's, I think this, I love that you used, or both you and, as you channeled, use the word recognition. When we're able to more quickly recognize, or like you said, the more you are observing and seeing where you're suffering, the more you're unaccepting of it. Like I almost want to put up a sign like, no suffering here, not allowed. Right?
Yeah. So that's interesting. I would use a slightly different word, if I may. I would say we have to accept that we're suffering, but don't tolerate it.
Oh, yes.
Right? Acceptance, because whatever we don't accept, we're rejecting. So it's like, okay, I'm suffering, but I'm not tolerating this, which is how you are, right? You weren't going to tolerate that thing for a year or weeks. You recognized you were suffering. Maybe you didn't have those words to describe it, but you recognized the suffering, and you're like, nope. Not tolerating this.
And there it is. That's the channeled question right away. Oh, I love this.
Okay.
I love it. How to shift from, it's going to be not something, but to not tolerate it. How can we shift our perception of accepting something or not even seeing it to recognizing that we will not tolerate this? Discernment, I guess. Discernment of suffering.
Discernment of suffering and then shifting of perception.
Yes.
There.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just writing this down. Discernment of suffering, shifting of perception. And again, the reason I write this down is because I'm going to post the replay link with a quote, but it will be an approximation of the quote from the divine. As I check it with them, is this good? Is this good? Does this resonate with the replay link? So the question, writing it down, it jogs my memory. Because sometimes I'm not fully aware when I'm channeling of every word that comes forth, and sometimes I am. It's new and fresh every time. Okay, so we are going to ask the divine. I'm going to ask the divine about discernment of suffering and the shifting of perception, and I guess the tolerance factor. Okay, just gonna grab a quick swig of water. And then, as I tell my husband, I'm going in, getting deeper, deepening that connection, opening the channel. So grateful. And we too are grateful for this opportunity and for this desire for clarity and for healing and for freedom. This is all about freedom. You are all able to be free. You are all yearning for freedom and moving towards freedom on your soul's journey, on the path of your human existence. The movement of the soul, the desire that you have, yearning that you have, is for freedom in whatever shape and form it takes for you. And so to recognize the suffering is so vitally important. And as it is, as Noemi Grace said, and Lisa Berry also shared, that the more that you are aware of yourself and the more that you heal, the easier it is to recognize that you're suffering. So you don't have to go for days feeling out of sorts and then realize, I've been suffering all this time. No, the more that you become self-aware, which you do, if through meditation, through being present in the moment, to practicing mindfulness, to seeing yourself with eyes of love, to having compassion, to embracing compassion for yourself, even if you don't know how to do it. Embrace compassion. I want to have compassion for myself. Say that. Tell that. Hold that in your awareness that you would like to have compassion for yourself, even if you are filled with judgment for yourself, and stating that intention. And then ask us for help. Divine, Source, God, whomever you want to call us. It's all wonderful. It's all, we respond to all of the uplifted names that you have given to us, and we appreciate them all. And so you just ask us. You ask us to help. Invite us to help. Invite us to uplift you and uplift your perception, your perspective of where you are and what you can see differently with that uplifted perspective. And so the discernment is so important. Discern that you're suffering. Discern the root, the cause of your suffering. Where's the judgment? What is it that you're holding on to that's causing you to suffer? And sometimes you cling to these stories that you've created that make you feel better, and sometimes they make you feel worse. But in that feeling of worse, you can get others to have compassion for you because you don't have compassion for yourself, and they can have compassion for you as being victimized. And stop looking for compassion outside of yourself for everyone else. Start bringing compassion to yourself and ask us, because we are filled with compassion. We are the source of compassion. Ask us for that compassion, and we will gift you with that compassion, and then you can gift yourself with it, and you can transform your life with that compassion, which is based in love, which is an outgrowth of love. And so being able to see the suffering with eyes of love, with compassion, and then to have a intolerance, but not in the way that you humans can be, and I'm intolerant to this and I don't tolerate that, but it is not being willing to suffer. It is the unwillingness. This is when we say, yes, be unwilling. We often talk about willingness, be willing to change, be willing to grow, be willing to heal. And this is where we're saying, be unwilling to suffer. Recognize your suffering, discern that you're suffering, be unwilling to suffer. The suffering is not worth it. Recognize how you lose yourself in the suffering, and you lose your joy, your peace, so many attributes, so many blessings. You lose your connection. You're not feeling the divine grace that's knocking on your door. You're not hearing it. You're not seeing it. You're not recognizing it, because your recognition, your sight, your hearing is filled with this victim stories, this victim awareness, this victim consciousness. And so recognize the suffering, discern it, and then be unwilling to continue to suffer. I do not want to suffer anymore. I have suffered enough. And if you don't know how to free yourself, ask for our help. We can't stress this enough. We're always available. We're never too busy. You might have friends that are mostly available, but sometimes too busy. And we're saying to you that we're never too busy. We are here to help you. Be unwilling to suffer anymore. And don't judge it. Don't judge. We will speak to that hindsight question from earlier. Don't judge it. Don't judge that you have suffered. Don't judge the suffering. Recognize it as not what you desire. Recognize it as it is not in resonance with who you are. It is against who you are. It is not part of who you are. Oh, suffering is out of alignment with who I am. And recognize that. And recognize that allows you to free yourself, not to blame yourself, not to judge yourself. So be willing to be unwilling to suffer, and be willing to stop judging. The two go hand in hand. If you are judging, you are suffering. The two go hand in hand. And we have much more to say, and yet we are aware for this time is coming to an end. And we are in such great love for all of you. We are complete. Namaste. Woo!
Oh, the powerful one for me. Be unwilling to suffer. It's not in resonance with who you are.
Yes. Be unwilling to suffer anymore. Yes.
I love that. And just as a reminder, if we go back to the title, which I'm going to go switch over here. I can't even find it. It doesn't matter.
The title of
our show today, it's about our mistakes show us a way out of suffering. So the being unwilling to suffer is by being able to observe and see the mistake, and with compassion, with eyes of love, and that is the way out of suffering. Oh, I love it.
The compassion, they kept bringing that up in the eyes of love. Yes.
Yeah, lots of compassion words. Oh, I think they're...
So we can never have too much compassion for ourselves, really, and others,
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's look at our mistakes. Let's have compassion. Let's do that. And we this is why we do this wonderful show, is just to get clarity around that thing and to see what is it I would like to see more and offer more love to. So thank you, Noemi, for sharing and being
thank
the
you,
channel.
Lisa, for sharing this experience with me. It is so uplifting, and I really enjoy it every time. So grateful.
Well, we'll
Thank
see
you
what
all to
goodies-
all the listeners.
Yes.
Those who are here with us live, those who are going to listen to the replay. We appreciate you, and we are here for you. And you can reach out to us on social media, Lisa Berry, Noemi Grace, and we'll be there. We'll respond.
All right, we'll see what goodies come up on the next Monday, or not next Monday, the first Monday of next month.
Nope,
Bye.
the fourth Monday of this month.
My goodness.
The fourth Monday of this month.
Fourth Monday.
On the 28th, 2 weeks from today.
We'll see you guys then. Thank you, Noemi.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.